Hello, Professor Shervani. My name is Haley Crum, and today I'm going to be conducting a performance interview. A performance interview is a method to increase the effectiveness of the interviewing process in selecting and promoting quality staff. The interviewer defines the skills needed for the job and structures the interview process to elicit behavioral examples of past performance. These questions are related to interviewees' past behavior. Today I'm sitting with my interviewee. His name is Luke Lyons. I chose him to do this interview because we work together at the same company, Diebold Nixdorf. I've talked about it before. And I am conducting this performance-based interview to see if Luke is a good candidate for a promotion within the company. He's going to be interviewing for a resource support specialist position in which he would work closely with ATM managers and their technicians. Luke, I just wanted to tell you that this interview is going to be only between me, you, and Professor Shervani. No one else will be viewing this video.
Okay.
Do you have any questions for me before we start?
No.
Okay, let's begin. Okay, tell me about your current position at Diebold.
So I'm an incident handler, which means that I primarily schedule technicians in the field. We do this based on a number of criteria: their training, the equipment, and the region that the equipment is in. All goes into where we schedule calls. We also process emails and messages from the field. We monitor an escalation tracking system that customers can access directly to put in any concerns or escalations for service. We also have morning meetings with the field management. In my area specifically for Mid-Ohio, I speak with a resource manager as well as the area managers and go over technician coverage and projects that are ongoing. And then throughout the day, we basically just manage what we call the Gantt, or our scheduling system. We make sure that calls and their allotted times are up to date. And it's pretty much a 24/7 cycle. So that would be the basics of what we do.
Okay, so you've already worked closely with RSSs, resource support specialists. Okay, and do you have any idea what that job entails?
As from what I can ascertain from my position, they are the go-to in terms of technician schedules of available technicians. So I don't actually create the week-to-week technician schedule.
Mm-hmm.
I only assign calls to available technicians.
Okay.
The resource scheduler creates that technician schedule and tells us who's available at what times. They also handle what we call resource requests.
Okay.
So if a company needs to gain access to a site for working on maybe a piece of equipment that we don't work on,
Mm-hmm.
or if it's a cash vendor that needs access to a terminal that we have key access to, then they have to send in that resource request. The scheduler has to look at her available pool or his available pool of technicians to see if we can support that request, and then they correspond with the customer asking to say yay or nay, and then to set that time up. I know they do a myriad of other things, primarily project management.
Okay.
So, if there's a lot of installation calls that are coming down the pike and we need to work with outside resource like the term is escaping me right now, but a technician that is not hired by Diebold, a contractor.
Gotcha.
They would correspond with that contractor's company and
Mm-hmm.
figure out that whole schedule. So they do quite a bit.
Okay. Can you tell me a time when you ever had to go to the RSS for any type of issue?
Quite frequently, actually, and I'm pretty lucky in my area to have a wonderful RS in Janice Horton. She helps me to update the Gantt if there's any issues or mistakes, or if there's technicians that are unavailable, if there's a technician that's causing potentially an issue in terms of their assignment, anything like that, I can go directly to her. and she can help me with all of that. So yeah, we are pretty much on a first name basis on
Yeah.
phone and Skype and email and everything. So.
Do you have frequent issues with technicians, or
No,
is it
I
usually
wouldn't. I wouldn't say that. It's just in our field, there's a lot of fluctuation. So I almost skipped it there. A lot of fluctuation.
Yes.
So it helps to have somebody who can actually, because I don't have administrative access to the Gantt. I can't actually manipulate schedules on our system. That would be her
Gotcha.
her access, and I need
Yeah.
her to be able to manipulate that for me.
Okay.
So
All right. So Diebold aside, we're going to talk about all past positions,
Mhm.
including Diebold, obviously. But these are some questions for any past experience that you may have.
Okay.
What was the most creative idea you introduced on the job?
Most creative, I would say it wasn't solely my idea. I knew that, so at the time I'm working at Mercy Medical Center in the emergency department, and we know that renovations are coming to half of the emergency department is basically going to be closed down. The setup for this is that we know also we're going to be taking over a section close to the emergency department to try and maintain a certain number of beds. It's over in acute dialysis. We have to put non-critical patients over there, but we still have to process patients.
Okay.
And I came up with the idea that that area should be maintained exactly like the emergency department. At first, it was more of a satellite, and I had my own technicians that I was in charge of, having to go back and forth between the two to get equipment. We didn't have any means of communication other than phones at that point, which, I mean, is direct, as it were, but not as quick as the radios that we were using and we were accustomed to. So while we felt out the new space, I came up with the idea of turning it into its own standalone. So I basically took over and got all the stock and the equipment, found housing appropriate for it, and I also made sure to set up a comms station, so whenever technicians or doctors or nurses were over there, they had immediate direct access to the regular system of communication. So yeah, that was actually my idea, so I thought that was pretty cool.
Okay. How did you convince your supervisor to let you do that?
It was at the time Gerald Clark was pretty open to ideas because of such of the strain basically on the department. ED2 was shutting down for basically a complete overhaul, and if I remember correctly, that was approximately 16 beds, which was almost 2/3 accounting of the beds for the emergency department, which is insane. So he was basically taking all ideas at that point. So I thought about it after a few days working over there. I even actually had my schedule changed for the whole period that it was over there. I was supposed to be a 12-hour shift, 3 days a week worker, and I ended up actually working 8-hour days Monday through Friday, specifically only when that area was opened up because I took charge of that. And I said, you know, I'm willing to change my schedule to be able to basically be a sub-supervisor for you, and I really think that this isn't going to be too difficult. I'm willing to come in early, get all this set up and taken care of, and maintain it before and after. And he said, you got the green light. So I made it work.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Describe a time when voicing your opinion was uncomfortable or could have had serious consequences, but you did it because you believe so strongly in the value of your perspective.
So not often do I get into positions that are uncomfortable, but when they do arise, I do want to make my voice heard. One of those particular instances had to do with, and I can't go into too much detail,
understand.
because it was a medical field, but
Mhm.
there was a psychiatric patient
Okay.
that I felt like I made a connection with pretty well, and he was pretty brash, and he lashed out, and he could come across as loud, which feigned violence. But
Okay.
he was I started to talk to him, it became clear to me that he just was in a horrible place, and he didn't know how to handle it. He had just lost somebody very
Yeah.
close and dear to him, and the charge nurse wanted to just strap him in 4 points, which is a restraint system onto the
Okay.
bed, and sedate him until they found a place that would take him. And I I took it upon myself, because at that point I had a pretty close relationship with that particular charge
Yeah.
nurse, and I pushed pretty hard to let me try and keep him out of 4 points, talking to me, gaining insight information, because he could recognize that I actually cared.
Yeah.
It can be difficult in the emergency department. You see so much so quickly that to be able to maintain and not burn out in there, you have to disconnect from it.
Yeah.
It was one of those rare points where I felt that wasn't the right thing to do in the moment, and I needed to use a little humanity.
Yeah.
It was really uncomfortable. I never stepped up to a nurse
Yeah.
before.
Definitely.
And it's not even just a nurse, but the physician also. It was actually funny. I was a little more worried about the nurse than the doctor, because the doctor were pretty close friends,
Yeah.
and he had a million other things on his mind other than that. But it was good. It was good to go home.
So the humanity worked
Yes.
in that situation.
Mhm.
Do you know, worst case scenario, what would have happened if it didn't work?
I know the plan was to restrain, sedate,
Mm-hmm.
and relocate is
Okay.
the phrase. So if at that point Mercy Medical had had just gotten rid of their behavioral unit, and even so that behavioral unit was not rated for a certain level of patient.
Okay.
So he would have been non-voluntary, and Mercy was only taking voluntary.
So they would have proceeded with the original plan
Right.
to sedate him.
And then try and find somewhere else to basically put him.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm glad that we were able to talk things out really instead.
Right. Me too. Yeah. Can you give me an example of the most complex project/assignment that you've had?
Well, I would probably go back to ED3 is what we called it. That project before that I asked it to do. And it was a lot more complex than I had originally anticipated, because of just the sheer logistics of it. We needed to, and it was actually a really fun project too, because
Yeah.
out of that project, we actually formed the mold for how the rest of the department would handle itself. So what we did was basically we had one physician for 8 beds in that section, which was used to be the acute dialysis unit. We had 2 nurses over there, so a nurse for 4 beds, and then we had a technician as well to be able to assist, or an orderly, I guess you could say is also the term. And with that, things just ran very smoothly. What the process was before was that doctors would pick and choose which patients in the ER they wanted to take. This forced the physician to basically sign on and just get going. And I love 99% of all doctors, but some doctors can be real pain. So basically, to put somebody in an area and assign them to a zone and a team, and you just work. You just start and you go, and things process so much more quickly. But it was complex in the way that I had to get ENT supplies, urology supplies. I had to figure out phlebotomy, and I had to make sure that we had a system for transport to lab, which luckily we had a pneumatic tube system in dialysis that we could actually go directly to lab. But then I had to talk with lab and tell them what our direct extension was, let them know that we were taking over this area. I had to figure out the phones. We had to actually port over telephone lines to that area so that we could still integrate with all the emergency department. I worked with probably 3 or 4 different departments apart from emergency department myself to get everything going, and it was complex.
Yeah,
it was a
extremely complex.
challenge, but it worked.
And you enjoyed it.
And from that, the pod system that we created then moved over to the main emergency department. I actually spoke with Dr. Spangler, who was the head physician over there at the time. He really liked what we were doing. He wanted to know how it worked, what we were doing differently, what I thought about it. We talked at length, and they implemented that pod system over in the main ER, and everybody loved it.
Wow.
They knew exactly what physician to report to because of the section that they were designated, and it just streamlined the process so much.
That's great.
It's one of those things that I forget about because I'm so focused in the here and now in my work, but it's nice to remember and look back. And
have you talked to anyone from Mercy? Do you know if they still use that system?
At last I knew they still had implemented the system, but it's been a few years, so I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Describe a situation in which you developed a group into a strong working team. I guess that would be a situation.
Very much so. So it was actually really interesting because after a period of time, that section took on it had a reputation. People wanted to be in ED3 because they knew that there were hardworking people over there of like mind. They wanted to process patients as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Okay.
They knew if they went over there, they had one physician to go to, and they knew that they could just focus on work as opposed to looking for the head of whatever patient they were taking care of at the time.
Okay.
And, I developed a pretty good rapport with everybody in the department. People liked to work with me because, they knew that if they were staying on top of their things, I would definitely stay on top of mine.
Yeah.
And it was just always fun to hear about people kind of trying to jostle to figure out, well, can I work over in ED3? I haven't worked in ED3 for a while, because it was that type of atmosphere. So it was different people interchanging throughout, so we didn't have one team consistently. But I would say whatever team was there, because I was basically the constant.
Yeah.
And whatever team was over there, everybody was just happy to be there, which was a huge relief because going into the same emergency department and seeing the things we see in an emergency department day after day, it can get daunting. It can burn you out. And to have a positive associated with that going in was a nice breath of fresh air. It was a good change of pace for people, and I could tell that, that was also part of the uptick in production. So it was very gratifying.
Okay. So, do you work with a team at Diebold in your current position?
I do. So, I'm in the North American division.
Okay.
Obviously, we've got sections of North America that we deal with. Overall, we actually just did a recent consolidation, so it is west, south, east. And within those, they also break those down into navigation numbers. And you have navigation numbers that are close to each other on the same team. So for instance, New York and Boston, that's kind of the East Coast group, they work very closely together. Those two people work in tandem. So you cover each other's lunches, breaks. You can take rollover phone calls because you have their area on your computer opened up to see their scheduling and their escalations. You basically share the area, but you primarily take one half.
Okay.
I work within the Mid-Ohio region, so I work with either, it's one of two people based on my shift that I see throughout the week, and we are part of East, so the two of us have another 4 people that are 6 navigators, who then also have 2 team leads that supervise us directly. Those 2 team leads then have a supervisor above them.
Okay.
And it's just essentially a chain of command that we fall into every day. We have, like I say, for the field, we have phone calls and conference calls, but within we have areas of concerns reports that we send to each other internally so everybody knows what's looking heavy, what's looking light. I might need help with this later. So yeah.
Do you feel like the Mid-Ohio region is a strong working team?
Right now, Diebold is having some struggle with turnover in all areas. So there's a good, strong core that has revealed itself because we've lost people.
Okay.
I would say overall, though, the rapport that we've created with the field and internally in the department, we have a strong team.
Okay.
I know that I would go out on a limb and do anything for Kevin and or Cheyenne, and they in turn would do the same for me. So it's good to have that in a team.
Yeah. Okay. Communication and leadership go hand in hand. Tell me about a time when your communication skills enabled you to influence the way others thought or acted, even in a very difficult situation.
So definitely influence. Going back to that situation from earlier with the gentleman who was in distress.
Yes.
I found, and the reason why I was in that emergency department, and the reason I used to have an emergency medicine background, is I found in those high pressure situations, I have clarity more so than in the mundane. My brain just sharpens up, and I felt in that moment there was so much noise because I wasn't in the thick of it when he had come into the department. But I saw it from afar. I was able to look at it in a macro view. He was surrounded by police, nurses, physician, technicians, people he didn't know. And it was just a very loud situation. Everybody was trying to tell him to calm down, which is the last thing you want to hear. Because right now, your body is crying out. You don't need somebody to, suppress that. You need somebody to receive it. And that is what was pulling at my heartstrings.
Yeah.
So when everybody dissipated from him, left him in the room, that's when I stopped by. I wasn't told to go. I wasn't directed to go. Probably may have gotten in trouble otherwise if it hadn't turned out positive. But I began a dialogue with him. Very simple dialogue. It was quiet. It was kind. And it changed his focus. It wasn't somebody directing him. It was somebody inviting him to engage.
Okay.
So he picked up on that immediately. He was very relieved to have that. It didn't fix him instantly.
Right.
He still was in horrible distress. But it was because of that connection that I was able to continue in the conversation. I sat down, we started to talk. He flared up pretty hard. I was in the room, and he got up and he slammed the big heavy door, which got everybody to jump up. They thought I was in trouble, so they came storming in.
Yeah.
And I was like, just hold on a second, because I wasn't scared. I knew, because I could see in him, he didn't want to hurt me. He didn't want to hurt anybody.
Yeah.
He wanted to get out of his reality, and he couldn't escape the horrible pain that he was feeling. He wasn't about to hurt anybody, because the whole reason he was in pain in the first place is because somebody he loved was gone.
Yeah.
You're not about to hurt anybody. You just need somebody to listen, and that's what happened. So by seeing that and analyzing it and understanding what it was, I was able to, with my own actions and words, help reassign and readjust his view and his thoughts. And I was able to direct him, as it were, not as a manager of his thoughts and feelings, but as a companion.
Yeah.
And I feel like the best managers and bosses, they don't lead from behind, they lead from in front.
I agree with that.
So
I also feel like more people should be like that, but you're right, it's very hard to work in an ER or a hospital in general, so you never know what those nurses are.
Right. I mean,
through.
what have they already gone through? I've seen nurses punch, kicked, spat on.
Right.
They don't know what you're going to be doing, And it was probably a green moment for me. The professional medical person would have said that was maybe not such a good move, but I think others would say you've got a certain knack or touch to sense that. So yeah, I think it went well.
Me too. Okay, so why do you think that you're a good fit for the RSS position at Diebold?
I have incredible work ethic. I see my job ahead of me, and I see everything that I'm supposed to do. I see all the boxes I want to tick, and there's just something inside me that just wants to tick those boxes. I'm not there to clock in and take the paycheck. I'm there to work and work hard, because the paycheck allows me to continue to come back. Working hard and going home feeling good about myself is something that paycheck doesn't do. I feel like this position is perfect for me because I have those skills to manage. I have those skills to understand people in distress, and that job definitely has to take that into account at times. I can multitask pretty well. The computer systems I know them like the back of my hand, so navigating and doing anything that's asked of me is going to be quick and precise. I'm not going to be fumbling and bumbling. I've got great communication skills, and I know that is kind of the cliche thing to say, but in terms of speaking to another person, I'm very good at understanding, am I getting through to this person, or do I need to cut this short and try and regroup and reassess and go at it in a different way? So I like being flustered. I like having work to do. I don't like being stagnant, and the RS is in constant motion.
Yes.
I feel like that's definitely something right up my street. So I would be very engaged, which is what I'm looking for. I want to be engaged and I want to be challenged.
Okay, well that concludes our interview for today. Thank you very much for answering the questions. I feel like if this was a real interview, I would have been able to easily make a good decision on if you were going to be the RSS or not.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you.